This one is going to be fun. We've got Philip J. Young, CEO and Director of Lobe Sciences. I have some fun questions for you, my friend, because I am interested in this company. And I was looking at it last night when my 1.5-year-old wouldn't go to sleep. So that's what happens. I'll let you jump right in. And then if we have some time for questions, I look forward to it.
I definitely will. Thanks, Patrick. And thanks for giving us the opportunity to share the story. Of
course.
We'll go to the first slide, the disclaimer slide. I'll be making forward-looking statements, and obviously you can go and check out all of our filings on the CEDAR site and get up to speed with where we are. So with that, we'll go right to the next slide. Who is Lobe? Who are we? What are we doing? What we're doing is we're developing psychedelic medicines to improve human health. We're looking at improving mental health as well as speaking. Sorry about that. It looks like we had a little power surge. We're digging into this, looking at PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, as well as mild traumatic brain injury. What we're doing is we're taking the pharmaceutical approach to developing the psychedelic medicines of the future. And we're doing that to enhance patient comfort, patient compliance, and patient outcomes. And as you see, as we go through the slide deck, we're on the way to achieving all of that. Next slide, please. So what's our focus? As I mentioned, we're looking initially at mild traumatic brain injury, which is a very large problem globally and something that needs to be dealt with and something that needs therapeutic interventions, along with post-traumatic stress syndrome associated with TBI, but also just mild traumatic stress syndrome in and of itself. We have a great collaboration with the Miller School at the University of Miami, which we'll talk about, as well as with a team of great engineers in San Diego developing what we believe will be an industry-changing nasal delivery device for not only our first products, but products to follow on. Next slide. So the market opportunity, as I'm sure everyone has heard about post-traumatic stress syndrome, especially now in the era of COVID, where upwards of 60% of frontline workers experience some forms of PTSD, as well as almost a majority of patients are experiencing PTSD syndromes. It's something that our country's never dealt with. The last pandemic was 100 years ago, and there was no opportunity to identify post-traumatic stress syndrome. But over and above the pandemic suffering population from PTSD, 10% of the global population will suffer from PTSD. And that's a huge number, as you might guess. And PTSD disproportionately affects women versus men. And that's also something that we need to address, and we will. 40% of the people who have TBI develop PTSD, and that's why we're focusing on the combination of mild traumatic brain syndrome as well as PTSD. So the next slide talks about where we are with MTBI. MTBI and post-traumatic stress syndrome are very, very often occur concurrently, sequentially. Once you have the traumatic injury to the brain, you can develop post-traumatic stress syndrome. The reason you develop PTSD is there's no really good therapeutic intervention for traumatic brain injury or concussion injury. Generally, it's a mild to moderate injury where the patients are told to go home. If the light bothers them, stay in a dark room, take over-the-counter meds for headaches. Don't walk around if you're dizzy, and it'll go away over time. And what happens is the symptoms of mild traumatic brain injury and moderate don't go away over time for 40+% of the patients, and they have to deal with the consequences, not only the trauma of whatever the event triggering it was, but they have to deal with the ongoing consequences of an unresolved illness. And we believe we can intervene early and bring resolution to these patients. So the no standard of care is a big problem. And we have evidence now from Dr. Michael Hoffer at the University of Miami that NAC, one of the products we're studying, N-acetylcysteine, definitely has a positive impact and improves patient outcomes. And we believe combining it with psilocybin will give us much better patient outcomes. I'll talk about that further in a minute. Next slide. I think people, if you're watching this and you're following the markets, you're aware that psychedelics, psilocybin, MDMA, LSD, the list is fairly long, have been around forever. In fact, we can document it back to 5000 BC. It's something that has been around. Medicinal pharmacology from natural ingredients have been around forever. Everyone's heard of shamans. And in the United States, we're just catching up with this. And really, it started in 2019 when people started legalizing some psychedelics in various communities around the country. We think that the resurgence of interest in this and interest in using psychedelics is only going to grow, and it's going to be a tidal wave. There's been no good treatments developed that are new and novel for most mental illnesses, from depression to schizophrenia to PTSD, in 30 years or more. And revolution is going to allow us to safely and according to the regulations, develop therapeutics that are going to improve people's lives. Next slide. So why psychedelics and NAC? It's an interesting combination, and we're taking the approach that we want to intervene in the acute phase of an injury. So as soon as possible after a patient has a head trauma, concussion, or mild traumatic brain injury, we'd like to intervene rapidly with NAC, N-acetylcysteine. It's a well-known supplement. It's been around and people understand the pharmacology, and also it's a very safe product. We want to intervene early with that because, as Dr. Hoffer's research shows, it has a major improvement on outcomes of patients. In addition to that, we want to add the therapeutic benefits of the psilocybin as quickly as possible after that, so that we can improve the outcome of the patients from start to finish. Will help with the concussion injury and will help deal with early on and reset so PTSD does not become a problem, or if it does, it is greatly lessened. Next slide. Obviously, we're looking to protect everything we're doing, and we have developed a very robust patent portfolio. We filed provisional patents for combinations of psilocybin, NAC, intranasal delivery with a proprietary device, in addition to MDMA. We've converted all these patents to the PCT process just recently, and we look forward to prosecuting them and supporting them with the data from the University of Miami, as we'll talk about in a moment. Next slide. So the University of Miami is doing a very large preclinical study in rodent models of traumatic brain injury as well as PTSD. These models are well validated, well understood, and very correlative to the human condition. Even though it says we started in November, we actually didn't start until January due to COVID. But the team at Miami has been working tirelessly and is now ahead of schedule, and we anticipate data being available from these studies in midsummer. What we're looking at is the rodent model, rat model of concussion, where the rats are exposed to a concussive injury and they're treated with both the NAC and the psilocybin. And we'll also have a group treated with just the NAC or just the psilocybin or just a placebo. And what we hope to prove, and we believe we will prove, is that the combination therapy is superior to anything by itself. That will give us the leg up and give us the baseline for filing an IND with the FDA, hopefully later this year or early next year. Next slide. I mentioned the engineering team down at VisionWorks in San Diego. They've done a great job of developing a nasal delivery device, which will instill the proper dose into the proper geography of the nasal passages so that it reaches what's called the olfactory bulb. The olfactory bulb is a specific spot in the nose or nasal passages where you get direct transmission into the brain. So we believe that delivering low doses of psilocybin directly into the nasal passages will create an opportunity for patients to dose and treat at home. And if we're going to make a large pharmaceutical compound and a large pharmaceutical successful product, we need to be able to treat patients where they are. And we believe this will give us the opportunity to do that. Next slide. So something that we announced last month, which it's almost 2 months ago now, time flies, is the divestiture of our cannabis asset called Cowlitz. Cowlitz was our cannabis operation in Washington State. We were able to craft a deal with Ionic Brands, a multi-state cannabis corporation, with other businesses, as you can see. Lobe Sciences received over 100 million shares of stock, and we'll be able to start divesting that stock later this year. In addition to that, we received $1.75 million in cash up front. This opportunity to have the stock and have the ability to fund the company through non-dilutive financing via the stock is a tremendous opportunity, and it's a value that's just not recognized in the marketplace as of yet. But this is going to enable us to fund the company and be able to do it without further dilution when the stocks and the shares become tradable later this year. It's a very exciting opportunity for us. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about some collaborations we have in addition on the next slide. I've talked about the University of Miami. University of Miami is a great collaboration, and one that we'll be able to build on, not just with the initial study in psilocybin and NAC, but also as we move forward with other psychedelic compounds. We announced recently that we signed a sponsorship deal with the NFL Alumni Association. This is an important issue because the NFL Alumni Association is dealing with the after effects in almost every player that they deal with of concussive brain injury, or traumatic brain injury. We partnered with them because we too believe it's a big problem, and it's a problem that hasn't adequately been addressed. Certainly we want to help the former players, and we want to learn about treating them and improving their lives. And we think that this collaboration will give us that opportunity. Another collaboration we recently announced was with a group called with a group called Virtual Psychedelics. We announced a collaboration to develop we developed a company. We entered a JV where we'll be developing what's called the Chrysalis Pod. It's going to be a fully immersive virtual experience so that the patients can lay in a recliner-like seat in a fully enclosed pod and experience virtual reality as they go through their therapeutic intervention with psychedelic therapy. We think early on this is going to be a wonderful way to get patients kick-started on their road to health. And we think teaming up with Dr. Skip Rizzo, who was one of the founders of combining virtual reality along with psychedelic therapy, and the whole team that has been in the virtual reality marketplace before it became a marketplace. They're visionaries, and we believe we'll be able to create a chrysalis pod that will give us the opportunity to treat the patients, expose them to a whole sensory experience, as well as monitor their biometric measurements. We'll be able to track heart rate, pulse, et cetera, the real time while the patients are in the virtual experience, and they're not tethered to a computer with a cord and with goggles. This will be a fully immersive experience, and something that I think is going to be very important for defining the entire virtual reality experience, and as we merge it with artificial intelligence. So stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of really good press coming from that as we develop that, not just for the medical applications, but we think further on into the future, the commercial applications for gaming, et cetera, are going to be mammoth. And we look forward to taking advantage of that. And then secondly, we announced the purchase of a company called Vitamind. Vitamind is a functional mushroom company. What they're doing is creating products that are commercial products that are not prescription products, using available mushrooms that have been approved by the various governments, United States, as well as Canadian marketplace. The mushrooms that we'll be developing and the products we'll be developing will be geared towards our mission, which is brain health and mental health. These mushroom products, whether they be capsule, teas, et cetera, are designed to improve brain health, clarity, functionality, memory, as well as important now in the time of the pandemic with COVID, immunity. And so we're excited about that opportunity, and we'll be making some announcements about that, furthering that collaboration just in the next week or two. So next slide, please. So we've got a lot going on. We've done a lot in the last few months, and we plan to keep achieving and alerting the market to what we're doing. We found ones that are novel, and we found ones that set us apart from the rest of the psychedelic marketplace. If you look at the VPI, and if you look at the Vitamind, and if you look at where we're headed with our clinical development of combination therapy for treating a very, very important problem in PTSD and mild traumatic brain injury, we've come a long way. And as you see here, by the end of the year, we'll have the data from University of Miami. We're looking at, and we hopefully will be communicating that we'll be starting a human clinical study, and we'll keep moving the development of our other programs downstream. Next slide. We've got a great team around us. Actually, the slide is a little older than the other one, but I've been in the industry, pharmaceutical biotech industry for 30 years, president and CEO of 5 public companies, and developed and brought multiple products to market from the bench. Brian, our CFO, and Masood, our CSO, are industry veterans with great lineages. And we have a great scientific advisory board on the next slide. Excuse me, I forgot about our board of directors. John Gilbert, who is our executive chairman, and Leighton and Michael all have great pedigrees. John in the cannabis industry, as well as a long history on Wall Street. And we're lucky to have those guys on board. I was excited about our advisors on the next slide. We have Dr. Mark Geyer. Dr. Geyer is one of the industry veterans, a grandfather of one of the founders of the psychedelic movement in the 60s. He has an encyclopedic knowledge of the space and has been invaluable to us as we've moved forward. Recently, we announced the addition of Dr. Ben Kilmendi from Yale University. Dr. Kilmendi runs and has appointed the head of the Yale Psychedelic Institute, where they're building a brand new building for him. And we look forward to partnering with him and using his knowledge. Ian Heyman and Bart Oates also joined us. Bart, from all you football fans, US football, may recognize Bart as a former NFL star with the NFL Alumni Association, and Ian's in Australia with MindMed Australia, who's a wonderful asset to us. So we're building a team around a great concept and around a mission, and I think we're well on the way to achieving that. And the next slide just gives you the share capital, where we are. Obviously, the whole sector has been down a little bit, and I don't believe that we're being recognized for the value we bring. And one of the things we will continue to do is get the story out, keep communicating with the marketplace. So with that, I'll end the presentation.
Thank you, Phil. Patrick, coming back in here, I really appreciate it. We have 1 minute left, and I want to get to a question Sam asked in the chat. One of the ones that I had as well. Can we expect an update soon on the nasal misting device? I know you showed us the timeline of the development there. Just in any sort of update we should expect.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, we finished the benchtop development of the product. So what the next step is to take the benchtop and make it small, and that's what the next engineering feat is going to be.
Perfect. Okay. So other than where folks can reach you, I'm interested to know this, and I think you may have said this. I just want to clarify again for the audience. This Chrysalis pod and the use of virtual reality in treatment here. How much of that is proprietary that you guys are developing, and how much of it is pulling from other resources?
Our goal is to have a 100% industry-leading proprietary system that we develop, and that's what Skip and Brett and Josh are doing. We were on a call this week. They have a vision.
Oh, it looks like we might be losing you a little bit.
No, around.
Okay.
Anyway, it'll be very proprietary, and we'll have it.
Perfect. That's exactly what I needed. So guys, you can reach Phil and team at LOBESciences.com. The Canadian ticker here, I believe, is LOBE, and then on OTC GTSIF. GTSIF. Phil, this is exciting stuff. I think it's really cool to see a diversified pipeline like this. So thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll see you again soon.
You sure will. Take care.
All right. Take care.